Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So you're not seeing, double, or you're not seeing something that's false. It is really the title. Dating sites for people with incurable STIs is not what it's cracked up to be. And so the article is under the motherboard vice. Dating sites for people with herpes aren't all what they're cracked up to be. And so the internet was supposed to be a transformative for people with the incurable but highly preventable STIs like herpes simplex virus. And so the reason I thought this was an important article to bring out is because some people know about the virus herpes and they think that some people think that there's ways that you can cure it. And so there are, other STIs that you can take, like maybe a medication or pills or a shot, and it cures it. But when it's a virus, it tends to be something that is incurable. But with herpes, it can be controlled. And so I don't know if anybody remembers there was an issue with Usher, the R&B singer, and 2 or 3 women came forward and they said that he had given them herpes. And so herpes, although it is incurable, it can be controlled. And it can be controlled with medication, and it can be controlled with creams. It can be controlled with, stress level. And so this article I thought was important. And then there's another one that follows this one that is not about herpes. It's actually about HIV. And so the reason I talk about this is because a lot of people don't have a lot of information about these type of issues, or they're afraid to search out these issues, or they're in doubt. And so you're going to see here of a picture that is very common. A lot of times you'll see people walk in, they'll have like what people look at as the common cold sore. And they pass it off as something very common because it is. And they say, oh, it's just a cold sore, it'll go away. But that is herpes. It's a form of herpes. It's herpes 1. It's not on the genitalia, it's on the lip, or it could be on the face, or it could be, inside the mouth. And it is herpes. And so a few years ago back, when I was regularly trolling OkCupid for dates. Now, this is the story. This is not me. So I received a message from a potential paramour. Okay, so he'd been scanning through the survey's answers associated with my profile, and one response in particular gave him pause. When he asked whether I'd consider dating someone with herpes, I'd responded, no. And so this is what people fear when they're honest about their sexual history. And the reason I'm bringing this out is because there are a lot of people that have had partners before they meet the one, or the right, Mr. Right, Mrs. Right, or whoever right. And a lot of times people don't realize that you've had a past, and you probably had maybe several relationships that some may have worked, some may have not been long-term and didn't work out, and you went your separate ways, or you outgrew each other, or whatever it may be. And so you have a sexual history. And so sometimes things happen within those histories that are out of people's control even. You may not have known that that person was infected with someone, some type of virus. And so sometimes you can end up with herpes. You can end up with, you can end up with things that they may not be HIV or AIDS or anything like that. It could be other things that can be controlled, and you might end up having to live with it. And you might have to go see a doctor regularly or take medication and what have you. And so this is what people commonly have seen. We've seen people a lot of times, they'll have a cold sore on their lip, and people just shuck it off. They say, oh, it's nothing but a cold sore. It's nothing, but it is herpes. So it goes on to read that for me, this is for me, the question had been, something I'd quickly checked off back when I was 21 years of age, first joining OkCupid. And so this is a dating site that people have been on. And some of the dating sites have like a section for people who have incurable diseases, and you're in hopes that somebody will have like an open mind and still date you, even though you have maybe this is one of them, herpes. And so it goes on to read, and people are ignorant and what have you, ills. So it wasn't some careful STIs or a grand statement about herpes, but for him, however, it was a potential deal breaker. So as you've probably figured out by now, my suture was a member of the vast group of sexually active adults who've been infected with herpes. And so there are a lot of people out there that have this virus. And some people are willing to talk about it and others aren't because they're fear of rejection. And so the internet was supposed to be a transformative for people with incurable, STIs that are highly preventable. STIs like herpes simplex, HSV, who wanted to date while being open about their status. These are people who want to be honest about their status. They want to tell about their sexual history. And they may not have been the one that necessarily had, given it to anyone. They're trying to keep from giving it. They're trying to at least let people know, what their circumstance is. And that there is still a possible chance that if they're with a partner, they're hoping that it's long term. So, how that goes. So the OkCupid is a dating site, and it says that the question was, in theory, a way to suss out potential partners with positive feelings about the SHSV plus sites like Positive Singles and MPWH that is called Meet People with Herpes. That's what the abbreviation means. And so it offered themselves up as a way of well meeting people who also, maybe you want to meet people who also have the same problem, or they're okay with dating someone who has that because they're well read about that virus and they're not in fear. And so there's no question that these sites, which have spawned their own like Tinder-like apps, are a fantastic demonstration on how innovative online dating platforms can be. But even as they bring together a number of people living with STIs, they don't seem to do much to improve general education about living with these STIs and herpes and other STIs. So, and as a result, people going online in search of connection and support often end up feeling stigmatized and isolated and more alone than ever before. And so there were dating sites that were set up for people specifically with these STIs that they can still carry on with life. Believe it or not, there's some people that have this and they can still have children, they can still get married, they can still have a sex life. But people who are not informed on these issues or who are very ignorant to these issues are in fear. They think that, oh, this is something bad and I'm going to get it and all this kind of stuff. Who you should be afraid of is people who either they don't know they have anything wrong with them because they're so busy sleeping with different people unprotected, or people who know they have something wrong and they intentionally do stuff to give things to people, and they never tell you that they had it. Never. Not even after. Never. Never. Those are the people you should be afraid of. People are not afraid of those people. They meet those people in clubs and bars, and those people can be at random anywhere. And and then too, here's the other flip side. You could end up meeting somebody who maybe they don't even know they have this STI. They've had it a while. They just said, oh, it's just a cold sore, just like this guy up here. Let me show you. It's just a cold sore. It's a harmless cold sore. It's not going to hurt you. But what do people do when they have intercourse? They kiss. Some people have oral sex. He's got a cold sore. It's herpes. So if You meet somebody and they don't even know what they have. You're gonna get it. So I'm just saying. But anyway, it says, so what does help? Not surprisingly, education, honesty, and openness is what helps. And so when Ellie was diagnosed with herpes in her senior year, these are different stories of different people now. So she was in college and she was convinced that the infection was a death sentence. And for her dating life, it was over. And so it goes on to say in the beginning that it seemed that that was the case, but I was being turned down by men who had every intention of sleeping with me until they found out. Ellie told me over the email. Okay. So hoping to improve her prospects. See, this is the thing. Men are willing to, like that guy. I just had a video where a guy, he said he slept with 341 women. Wilt Chamberlain slept with more than 19,000 people. Out of all of those numbers of people, somebody was infected with something. You had some clinic visits. You had to have known somebody had something somewhere. And if it wasn't an STI, there was baby involved somewhere. Somewhere. Somebody's unhappy somewhere. So, it comes with responsibility when there's sex involved. And so it isn't just about the sex alone. There's responsibility and consequences that come along with it. And so this is one of them, or one of many. And so this girl's situation, she said she was trying to meet people, and they turned her down when she told the truth. She was honest. But these same guys will sleep with women out there who maybe they don't know they have it, or they know they have something, and they'll be willing to jump in the bed with them as long as they look right. And they don't know that these people got it, and they'll get it. And they'll end up like the guy up top that I showed you. Anyway, hoping to improve her prospects at least connecting with people in a similar position, Ellie turned to the internet. And so this is what a lot of people will do. They'll go on the internet and go online looking for relationships, and they get turned down when they're honest. And so, but despite the promise of the community and the support, she found that STI-focused dating sites just made her feel even worse. So it felt like a dating site for pariahs, she noted. Pariahs, if I said it right. It was one with a bad design, shitty UI, and a very few members that were on it, and many of them whom were ashamed or of their diagnosis to actually post a picture of themselves. And so some people do that on these dating sites like this. Instead of being honest about who they are, they don't want to even post their profile picture, because what it is you say what you have been diagnosed with. And, just like you would on Facebook and all these other sites, post pictures of yourself. And a lot of times people don't want to post pictures of themselves. But see, I'm going to add something in here. A lot of times the reason why some people don't want to post pictures of themselves is because maybe they knew they had this STI all along, and they've been sleeping around with different people and they don't care. And they might be married, and they're just looking to have sex with different people, and they just don't give a shit. And so, that could be another reason. And then the other reason is maybe that they really are trying to be honest, but they're in fear because they might be a person that is in a high ranking position somewhere in a career. And if they post their picture, now everybody knows so-and-so's got, herpes or whatever, and they want to keep it confidential. And so since the site's only criterion for joining was the STI diagnosis, members didn't really have that much in common aside from their diagnoses, which may seem obsessed by, many seemed obsessed by. And so Ellie noted that it was more of a group of therapy site than dating site. And so people, mainly what they talk about is the diagnosis of what they have. It didn't seem like you were actually meeting people to get in relationships. So it wasn't as a happy environment. So nothing about it was sexy at all, is what she stated. So see here, right here, you see there's a site right here. And it says, look how many people are registered members. Look at the numbers. 1,065,015 and plus members. And so the largest confidential herpes STD dating community and support since 2002. So that's just to let you know that's that's just actually I believe that's a small number. There's a lot more people that are out there that have things that people don't know about. And I just wanted to bring this out because I think people don't really realize the numbers of people that are walking around that actually live with an STI. More troubling, the sites seem less likely to unite people with STIs than to divide them into cliques. Okay. As Ellie explained, there was this shitty STD hierarchy, which ranked curable STIs above herpes. HSV1, formerly known as oral herpes, above HSV2, formerly known as genitalia herpes. So one is on the mouth and the other one is in the private area. And so both of which were considered better than HIV. Okay, so both of these you can live with, you can have babies. Believe it or not, you can have babies as long as they are not in the areas and they're not active. You can have sex, you can have a relationship, you can get married and everything with herpes, believe it or not. But HIV is a whole nother story in and of itself. So like this woman says, there was a hierarchy. One STI is better than having the other. And so herpes is the lesser of the evils as opposed to HIV, because HIV is a different ballgame. So I just felt like it was used to make people feel bad about their illness, feel better by putting other people down. And so Ellie's not alone in her assessment of STI dating sites as a barren, depressing wasteland. And so Anne, another person who contracted herpes in her first time, this woman contracted the first time she had sex, noted that with roughly 20% of the population having HSV2, there should be way more faces to click on. And so this points to another issue with these sites. Whether because of ignorance, stigma, or some combination of the two, many people living with herpes either don't know about it or they won't admit it. That's what I was saying. And admit their infection, and further fueling the cycle of stigma and ignorance and shame. And so this is not to say that herpes condemns you to a depressing, dateless existence. It's just that corralling people with STIs into a corner of the internet, excuse me, the way she said corralling people while making no attempt to improve education. Sad around the reality of what the STI diagnosis actually means doesn't really do much to change the situation. So it's kind of jacked up, because what the sites do is they bring a bunch of people and they're already depressed about it. And so, excuse me for laughing, it's not funny, but what's funny is the way she said corralling a bunch of people. That's sad. But anyway, it says MPWH might offer community in the form of blogs and forums, but since much of the content is user generated, excuse me, excuse me for laughing. She sounded depressed, but it's not funny what her situation with the way she said it. It was the wording. Okay, if the user generated site's tone is set by panicked people who are convinced that they're dating outcasts. See, this is actually, it's what they're saying in the wording that's got me laughing. It's so depressing, but it's kind of comical the way they worded it. But rather than they say that a calm, knowledgeable expert there to educate and reassure the site's members that everything's okay. So MPWH staff do contribute posts to their site, but they can be poorly written and full of misspellings, hardly an encouraging sign for site members. And so I think here, this is something that's part of one of those sites, or it's, it's an author And I think her name is Ella Dawson. She stated on a social media named MTV that she celebrates her herpes on May 9th every year. And so this is somebody who actually is living with the herpes. It's a staff. She is actually, she says, meet people with herpes form. So there's a form, and people who have it, you know, I guess she gives words of encouragement that you can still move on with your life. You can still live. You can still have a love life. You can have children. You can have all of that. And so as a result, these sites merely serve as to segregate people who have herpes from people who don't, or don't admit it, further cementing the erroneous idea that a common viral infection somehow makes a person permanently uneffable. Excuse me. I didn't want to say it because it's just, you know, I'm trying to watch what I say. But when in fact, a combination of medications, condoms, and avoiding sex during outbreaks can make sex with herpes fairly safe. And a lot of people don't realize that. And so I wanted to let people know that even though Usher and some of these people, you see these stories and they're all blown up all over the media, so-and-so has herpes and all this kind of stuff, you can still have safe intimacy with people who have it, as long as they are honest about it and they go through the steps of precautions when they have an outbreak. And so those are the things that happen. And so it says here that if you avoid having the sex during the outbreaks, it can make sex with herpes fairly safe. So certainly much safer than sex with someone who blatantly assumes that they're STD or STI free. And so that's what I'm saying is, people don't realize when you're dating all these people on these regular sites who, if they're not an STD or STI site, you don't know if these people, they could be in this group. They could know they have something and give it to you and pretend as though they could be in the denial phase where they pretend like they don't have anything. Because there's a couple of reasons why people do this, and it's because of the fear of rejection. That's one. The other thing is there could be some pent-up anger. And maybe there are, believe it or not, there's some people that are angry at specific people because they think it's your fault that this happened to me. And so let's say, I'm just throwing an example out here. There's maybe a man, and he gets something, and he figures, oh well, I've had all this sex with all these different women, whatever, it's their fault. If they lay down and sleep with me, they deserve what they get, you know. And so there's some people that are like that, and so they'll continue to sleep with different women, and they'll blame them for what happens, whatever happens next. So what does help, not surprisingly, education, honesty, and openness about the topic of herpes. And despite their initial fears, both Ellie and Anne have gone on to have awesome sex with amazing people, none of whom they found by explicitly seeking out other people with herpes either. So that's the other problem with sites like MPWH. They assume that people with STIs need a specialized dating site when plenty of HSV plus folk are able to find love or just some good old-fashioned, you know, intimacy the same way everyone else does. Tinder does, you know. So anyway, it's worth noting that it can take some time to get to the point where you're comfortable dating in the wild with herpes. So Ellie found that dating European men who, in her experience, are less burdened by cultural baggage around herpes helped her regain her confidence again. And Anne worked through her shame in therapy and is now really open about IRL, about her diagnosis, which she says, I think has really helped my friends who also get diagnosed. And so fundamentally, she says just treating herpes as the annoying and but manageable infection that it is has a huge impact on potential partners. So I've noticed that if I am not freaking out when I disclose to my partner, they don't freak out either, Anne remarked. And so I have found even people who say they won't date someone with herpes, once they know me, she said, and have more information, they will change to a yes because I am fly and cool as hell. That's what she says. So she has a lot of confidence. And I thought this is an important story to bring out because people like this exist. There's lots of people like this that exist out there. And unfortunately, the ignorance that is just, you know, rampant all over the net and all over the world practically. It's unthinkable that people would assume that nobody, that the world is STI free. There's so many different things that people have you wouldn't believe. But anyway, this is in the motherboard. It says Sex by Lux Al Alptrom, May 3rd, 2016. So this has been out for a while, and I thought this was important. So that moves me to my next topic right here. And I've done a lot of these videos like this because there's so much ignorance with young people, and they said that STIs have gone up, and I feel like people don't teach people anything about these things, and they assume that, oh, there's nobody out there with this, and oh, if I just don't have sex with those people, the first thing, they don't want to tell you they got it because they're in fear of rejection. And so then what about people who do have it, who don't even know they have it, or they know they have it intentionally giving it to people? And so you could become the next victim. So anyway, Huffington Post brand form. So this is about the Center of Disease Control Prevention by CDC and Let's Stop HIV Together. And so this is a person who actually has HIV. What to say when someone says that they have it. Okay, so that there's going to be people in your life that you're going to meet that are going to actually admit to having an STI or something like this, which is also considered an STI, but it's incurable. It's just, what they do is they try to prevent it from turning into AIDS, which is what I've learned is people who have HIV and are, or who they're at a stage, if they have unhealthy, T cell level, us as healthy people who have a high T cell count and have a cold or we're sick with something are more of a threat to them than they are to us in that sense of the word. But it says if a friend or a partner tells you that they have HIV, you might be unsure how to respond to something like that. But you don't need to know all of the scientific terminology and the latest data on HIV to offer comfort and support. And so depending on the specific situation and the tone, here are 5 things that you might consider saying when someone admits their status of HIV. So number 1 is thank you for letting me know. If someone discloses their status to you, it's a sign that they trust you. And so do your best to be respectful and supportive in return. And if you have questions, ask them how can you get informed about this HIV, and a small gesture to learn more will show that you care. Okay. And so number 2, it's always good to know your status. So knowing HIV status is an important part of taking care of overall health and offer a person encouragement in taking that critical first step. And sometimes a person may confide in you about their status in hopes that they'll feel comfortable enough to do the same, and feel free to share your status and date of your the date of your last test. And so people want to be honest to a friend or somebody that they might be considering being involved with some kind of way, significant other. And so when you want to get in a relationship, you want somebody to be honest about what their sexual history is or what they're dealing with. And it sounds like a lot of people don't want honesty. They want lies. They want somebody to lie to them and not be honest and tell the truth. And then that's how you find that a lot of people end up with this stuff. And so, and then people who have it want to share, but they're afraid. And so they withdraw themselves from getting involved with people because of that. and maybe they went through a traumatic situation. Not everybody gets things um, the same way. It could have been a marriage, like the one lady in the other article. She said the first time she laid down with somebody, she ended up with something because that person, either they didn't know they have it or they knew they had it and they gave it to her. And so that's why I said sex is not just sex. There's more involved in it. And so, number three, another way is how can I help you stay healthy? And so, science has proven that people with HIV who take their medications as prescribed maintain undetectable viral loads, having effectively no risk of transmitting the virus to a sexual partner. Now, I feel a little squeamish about that whole thing. Even me, I feel squeamish about that. But they say if you have it and if the viral load is low, um, then there's less of a risk of passing it on to someone. So the fact is that people with HIV who are in treatment not only help themselves stay healthy, but also protect their partners if they have somebody that cares about them, that wants to be involved with them on that level. So let them know that the treatment can be as simple as taking one pill every day, and encourage them to take the charge of their health. And so those are important things to know. And it goes on to read that number 4, is there anything I can do to help? So if someone has been recently diagnosed, they might be feeling overwhelmed or confused about their status, and tell them that they can reach out to a support group, offer to accompany them to appointments and support groups that they might be interested in getting involved in. And so maybe you're a best friend of that person and they look to you as guidance. And so instead of you taking their information and telling everybody and putting on Facebook on blast and making them feel low, maybe they trust you to some degree. And, if you are a good friend, you're not going to put them on blast. You're going to be supportive and you're going to do things like this. Is there anything that I can do to help? And so number 5, I'm glad that you feel comfortable telling me about your status. Remind them that they are still the same person to you as they were before you even knew. And that the individual is not defined by his or her HIV status or herpes status as well. So let's add that in there, because it continued to treat them as normally that you would in private and public, and remind them that you value and trust and you will respect their privacy. And so that's the thing that people are in fear of, because a lot is put on social media about people, and it's made to make fun of them and to put them down. And so I know I was laughing, but sometimes these articles, they word things so silly. And really the whole concept of these things like here is not funny, and how people get treated, it's not funny. When people are ostracized, so people can, they can have these type of issues and be ostracized and be made to feel like they got to be alone for the rest of their life. So this is out of Huffington Post. It talks about, different diseases. I talk about stuff like this all the time because I feel like the way the world is, everybody doesn't really talk to young people about these things. They're afraid. And then there might be people who they know they have this. They're afraid to come out and talk about it because they think they're going to get made fun of, because people do mean things on social media, and they make fun of people that have these issues, and they think it's a joke. It isn't a joke to have this. Some of the wording in here was kind of hilarious. There was, the way she talked about the dating sites was what I was laughing at. She was talking about how they kind of make people feel more down in the dumps. The dating sites sometimes can be, like she said here, the way she worded it, she said, she noted, and one bad design, shitty UI, and the very few members, many of whom are too ashamed of their diagnosis to actually post a picture on their profile. So she kind of said that these dating sites just made her feel more worse. And so, the thing is that I don't think a lot of people know about this, that these sites exist. And then some probably do. They went on there and they said, oh, nobody's on here. Everybody's afraid. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is because there was an article recently that talked about this right here. And this isn't more closer to our time. It's August 29th, 2018. It's in the US. There's a rise in STD diagnoses. It isn't a sign of moral. Da, 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 da. There's a high, an all-time high. This is the popular science. Okay, and so let's say this video is a 3-for-1. And so I I'm doing this as a show of concern and awareness as well. And so sexually transmitted diseases are at an all-time high again. But why? Here's what you should know about the CDC's new data. And so this is by Rachel Feltman, and this was August 29, 2018. And so you see here that a lot of young people, they rely on the internet and they talk about, all the stuff that's going on in the world of dating and who's breaking up with who and who's getting with who. So a record-breaking number of sexually transmitted infections were reported in the United States in 2017, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And so all told, there were nearly 2.3 million cases of chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis, and 200,000 more than in 2016. And so, which was a record-breaking year in its own right. And so we are sliding backwards. Jonathan Merriman, Director of CDC National Center for HIV and AIDS, Viral Hepatitis, STD, TB prevention, said in a statement. So it is evident that the systems that identify, treat, and ultimately prevent STDs are strained to near breaking points. And so it says, while better healthcare is sorely needed to treat this problem, you can do your own part in fighting off the spread of infection. And the first step is to understand that sexually transmitted diseases can happen to anyone. Okay. I thought that was important to mention because people act like, oh, it's not going to happen to me. I'll just look cute, dress cute, take a bath, and I'll go to the doctor once a year and get a checkup, and I'll go get an HIV checkup. I don't have this, I don't have that. If I look cute and I get my hair and nails done, I won't have anything and nothing will happen to me, and the guy's the same thing. Oh, I'll just have sex with as many females as I can. Nothing will happen to me. I'm going to be around. So this is the kind of, some people think like that. And so a quick note of acronyms. So it just tells you the acronym. CDC is Center for Disease Control. STD is sexually transmitted diseases. That STI is sexually transmitted infections and stuff like that. And so those were acronyms. First things first, that how the infection rates changed. CDC's most recent complete report of 2016, which showed that chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis, the three infections that the doctors are required to report, were on the rise. And so the report doesn't include HIV, one of the most notorious STIs, which is a sexually transmitted infection in the country. On average, across most individuals' demographic groups, rates of HIV were on the decline as of the last data assessment. So the CDC's 2016 report does not include any data that refutes that. And so the increasing widespread use of drugs to prevent transmission makes it unlikely that HIV rates are going up. And so they have a lot of treatments. They worked overtime on the HIV thing. So a lot of that is a credit to the medicines that they have now that is trying to keep it at bay. It doesn't mean it's curing it, because that's incurable. So I want to let people know that HIV is not cured. That as they, some people will say they got all this medicine and all these different things, or, but once you get it, you got it, So also worth noting that herpes wasn't lumped into the 2016 report, as is not mandatory for doctors to report a diagnosis. So you almost certainly had that before 2016 started anyway. So on Tuesday, CDC releases preliminary data for 2017, and things aren't looking up. So they saw that 555,608 cases of gonorrhea, nearly 1,000 more in that than 2016, and 30,644 cases primary secondary syphilis, up around 2,600 cases since the previous year, and 1.7 million cases of chlamydia compared to 2016, 1.6 million. So nearly half all chlamydia cases were reported in 2015 to 24. age 15 to 24-year-olds females. And so the increases of 2016 to 2017 year are worrisome, but they become much more troubling when compared to the data of just 5 years ago. Since 2013, gonorrhea diagnoses have increased 67% overall and have nearly doubled among men during that time. So that's why I put in men, because people are like, I'm gonna be all right. I'm a man. I'm manning up. Yeah, and you're getting diseases. So according to what this is saying, so syphilis cases went up this percent, particularly among men who have sex with men, though infection rates in women are also rising as well. So how worried should people be about these infections? The good news is that all three of the aforementioned infections are bacterial infections, and they're generally easy to treat. As of now, they say. But bad news is that it's tricky generally. Antibiotic resistance is an issue now. So the evolution of the bacteria to invade the drugs we've designed to kill them so is on the rise, and the bacteria that causes the STI are no exception. So a recent report in the World Health Organization looking at the data in 77 countries found that gonorrhea is increasingly resistant to antibiotic drugs. And so this is what brings me to this. I saw that they have this new gonorrhea this new gonorrhea that is resistant to drugs, just like what it's saying here, that eventually there won't be a cure for that either. And it's called a super gonorrhea. And I want you to remember that. So unfortunately, they reported that only 3 such drugs were in any stage of development at the time. So CDC preliminary report in 2017 includes a troubling detail on the subject. While the current treatment recommendation, a shot antibiotic, what is it called? Ceftriaxone. And so along with the oral dose of, these are drugs, and so they have long names. So zithromycin has yet to fail in any patient. Lab testing shows emerging resistance to azithromycin. And in 2013, just 1% of the gonorrhea samples tested in the lab showed resistance to azithromycin. So that's now risen to 4%. And so they're testing now in labs to try to see if they can curb these issues, but it doesn't sound very good. So we expect gonorrhea will eventually wear down our last highly effective antibiotic, and additionally, treatment options are urgently needed. So Gail Boland, MD, Director of CDC Division STD Prevention, said in a statement, "We can't let our defenses down. We must continue to reinforce efforts and rapidly detect and prevent resistance as long as possible." So the chlamydia becomes more common. As it becomes more common, it too will also, no doubt, increasingly evade pharmaceutical interventions. And so both chlamydia and gonorrhea are often asymptomatic, but can cause pain and infertility. And so asymptomatic is when you don't, sometimes you can have these diseases and not have any symptoms. That's what it means. So some people can be walking around that they can look cute, dress cute, have a nice car and all that stuff, and they have these diseases and not know it. And they don't even know. They think they're just balling out of control, and they got all these women and all these men, and they're the lick, you know. So syphilis is typically still easy to treat with good old penicillin, they say. And so through though again, increased infection rates offer more chances of bacteria to develop resistance. So what they're saying is it's over time of so much of the exposure to the drugs, it builds up its own immunity to these drugs as a bacteria, and it becomes resistant where the drugs no longer work to cure it. And so it goes on to say that, but it might actually be the most troubling infection in the CDC of 2016, it says. That's because people aren't getting treated when they have these diseases, and that in turn is causing a rise of potentially fatal fetal conditions that simply shouldn't exist in the age of antibiotics. And so congenital syphilis is a terrible disease. Okay. And so when syphilis goes untreated during pregnancy, miscarriages are incredibly common. And 40% of the fetuses with syphilis are carried to term, are stillborn, or die shortly after birth. And those who survive can suffer from deformed bones, anemia, enlarged livers, spleens, jaundice, meningitis, rashes, blindness, deafness, and other brain and nerve-related problems. So in 2016, saw that 628 cases of congenital syphilis in the U.S. was up to 492 in 2015. So the sharp rise in the particular condition gets the crux of the whole issue. So it's not just that more people are getting STIs and diseases, it's that they're not getting adequate access to health care. And so that's another problem. So this is completely preventable problems. Gail Boland, director of CDC Division STD Prevention, told CNN. So every baby born with syphilis represents a tragic public health system failure. And so all it takes is a simple STD test, antibiotic treatment to prevent the tragedy from occurring. And so why rates are up? It's a tale of old as fear-monger World War II posters about the dreaded VD. That's venereal disease, not Victory Day. So a lot of times media and people will scare other people. You know, when you say, oh, he's got herpes. Oh my God, girl, I don't want that. And, you know, black people say, oh, girl, I don't want him. You know, I don't want her, you know, and all this kind of stuff. But they won't read about all the, you know, other things that are out there, but they're willing to jump in the bed with people. And then you might be getting something or have something and don't even, you might be asymptomatic. You've got something and don't even know you got it. And so they won't even read about this stuff. They just talk about, ooh, who's got this and who did that and who shot who, but they won't go and get themselves tested. And so this happens, you know, so you've got people out there like that. So as recently as 2013, one study found that half the patients with STIs or STDs clinics were unwilling to use their health insurance to cover the cost of their visit. Likely because of privacy concerns, researchers concluded. So in 2016, the U.S. budget of abstinence only until marriage, sex education in schools, which has been shown time and time again to benefit ineffective in combating both teen pregnancy, sexually transmitted infections, was increased to $85 million, okay, per year. And so the average high school health course includes less than 4 hours spent talking about all the sexually transmitted infections, which are STIs and pregnancy prevention combined. 87% allow guardians to exclude their children from even this coursework. Meaning they don't even want their kids knowing about it because they're religious or whatever, or they think it's going to harm their kid, or oh, my kid is not sexually active. Usually the kids, they say, oh, my kid is not sexually active. Those are the ones that are sexually active. They're going to find out because you keep hiding stuff from them. So they're going to find out, and from their peers, they're going to learn, and they're going to learn bad habits. And so they're going to learn things that you don't want them to learn because you're not telling them anything. And so they don't know what to fear because you don't tell them the right things to be fearful of to protect themselves. And that's stuff, just not telling them anything is not helping them either. So on the other hand, it's not surprising to hear that the rates of infections are going up on average instead of down. And so given the lack of education and discourse on the health issue, it would make sense that for many Americans to interpret the findings of the CDC controlled annually sexually transmitted disease surveillance report as a result of some sort of moral decline. But according to the medical professionals, there is problem isn't the people are having isn't that the people are having more sex. It's the problem is that sexual health care and the policies that fund it are in dire shape. And so the recent study actually found that teens are waiting longer to have sexual intercourse, which is a good thing, they should, and are more likely to use contraception because hopefully because of some of the messages I'm getting out, you know, is to be safe. So this is slightly misleading since the increase in oral sex is there because oral sex to some people is not sex, believe it or not. Oh, that's just oral sex. We didn't actually penetrate each other. That's just regular. That's nothing. We're not really touching each other in the private areas. We're just having oral sex. So that's not sex. So some people believe that. And so even husbands that cheat on their wives, they believe, oh, she just had, you know, did something to me. I didn't do it. I didn't touch her. She touched me. I didn't touch her. It was oral sex. That's all. you know. So this is where you get those misconceptions and the lack of through sex ed and teach young people that protection, you need protection for that as well, also needed during these sorts of encounters, could help STIs keep from spreading because you can still catch diseases in the mouth. And we see the other article where the guy had herpes in the mouth, which some people, many people, we walk around with cold sores. Hello, that's what they are. It's herpes 1. So people working in this area have been known for several years, and that decreases in resources committed to STI prevention would ultimately result in increase such as we've seen. So says Jay Dennis Fortenberry, a professor of pediatrics in Indiana State University and School of Medicine. So Fortenberry serves as American Sexual Health Association Board of Directors and is also a president of the American Sexually Transmitted Disease Association. Other clinicians say that the funding cutbacks for both prevention and education in healthcare are to blame as well. So we've passed the threshold of minimal investment and are seeing that the predictable consequences, he says. Funding issues aside, he says that it's important to remember that STRs are disproportionately more common in young and marginalized people. So STRs are a consequence of far more individual behaviors and are products of our society continued inattention to community, to racism, sexual and gender discrimination, and tolerance of violence. So he says, so without a broad commitment to sexual health as a public health priority, these rates will keep going up. And so we can't address STI epidemics by pretending they simply are a matter of individual choice, Fortenberry says. So what can I do about it? Supporting policies that give everyone access to reliable medical care and comprehension, such as what I was saying with the immigrant situation. And, people that are here that aren't immigrants, some people don't want their kids knowing about certain things because they think, oh, that's against my religion. And it's just going to push the kids into sex. Well, guess what? You want them not to go into it because these are the things that you can get if you have unprotected sex. And even if you have protected sex, you still can get certain things. So that may be more the indicator whether your kid's going to get involved or engage in these type of activities rather than just not tell them at all what's out there. So that's my intake on it. But it says that if you worried about your own personal sexual health, well, that's easier getting tested. And so often get tested more than you think. You need to get tested and educate yourself about the actual risk factors of sexually transmitted infections. If you swear you'd never ever had sex with someone with herpes, but haven't asked for the STI panel at the doctor over a year, you haven't educated yourself. So if you blanch at an ad of drugs and allow HIV positive people to stop using condoms with HIV negative partners, but yourself engage in oral sex without condoms or dental dams, ditto. It's basically saying that, you got people out there that are really very misinformed. They think, I'm not going to get this. I'm not going to get that. I'm dating clean people. They may not even go to get themselves tested. They don't even care. They figure if they just don't talk about it and just don't think about it and act like it doesn't exist, it won't affect them. There are people like that. And so it says we need less stigma about these issues and more efforts to actually improve our health. And so unfortunately, STIs carry erroneous, enormous stigmas in this country, in America especially too. And it's hard for people to come forward and for treatment because they don't want to admit that they have something. So believe it or not, people know that there's some people walking around that know they have stuff and they don't want to admit it. It's hard for them to admit it. And so it's the stigma, how people make you feel. And so David Harvey, executive director of the National Coalition of STDs Directors, told CNN this. So ironically, HIV is an STD, but we have a very visible community who advocates and works to tell stories about the impact of HIV on people's lives, but we don't have that going on with people who have gonorrhea, syphilis, and chlamydia, and also herpes. So we need a network of voices that say it's okay to get help. So given that so many medical practitioners are less informed about STDs, STIs than they should be, on us think it's, it's sad people won't talk about these things, what times we're living in. When people can't be honest as to their kids, come on, people, something's really wrong with this. That people can't be honest to their own kids, they can't be honest to young people and tell them that there are people walking around that have these things going on in their lives. And so there's people, you're going to meet all different walks of people in life, and you're going to have different encounters. And if you are not informed on what's out there, you're going to wind up with this. And you're going to be one of these people that are in this article that I'm like laughing about how they worded these articles. You're going to be like this guy right here. And you're going to be trying to find a date, and you're going to know you have this, and you're going to have the hardest time trying to get with people because these stigmas are out there. And this is what people are going through. And this is kind of jacked up, but it's part of life. And let's just call it for what it is. Now, are people bad who have these problems? No. Anybody, it says anybody can have this. You could be a nice person and you can still end up with it. I'll tell you a story, and I'll end this. There's a woman, I don't know if anybody remembers this. So I always say when I go back to these stories, I could be telling my age, but HIV, this one is about HIV, and it's just the AIDS. Actually, this woman ended up with AIDS. And so as a matter of fact, let me see if I can actually pull it up so that you don't think I'm just making up a story. So all right. So this lady, okay. All right, great. Okay, so this lady's name was Kimberly Bergalis. Kimberly Ann Bergalis, January 19th, 1968 to December, that's when she was born, this December of 1991. So as an American woman who was one of the 6 patients purportedly infected with HIV by a dentist, David J. Asser, who was infected with HIV and died of AIDS in September of 1990, and this incident is the first known case of clinical transmission of HIV. Yes, I said it. So there are some incidences in the past where this woman, she went to a dentist and she contracted it. And you know why? What I recall is that they weren't cleaning the instruments well. And at the time they weren't, they have this enclave or whatever this thing that they use to kind of like sterilize the instruments, and they weren't doing it. And so they were using whatever instruments they use on other people, they used it on her, and she ended up contracting it. Then there was another incident where a boy, he contracted through a blood transfusion. And so that one was pretty big. And his name was Ryan White, if I recall. And so those are just some cases. There might have been some other cases of people that ended up with things like this. But yeah, there are situations too where people through blood to blood contact, there are people like if you've got a cut and then a person has a cut and they have something, you can contract things like that. And so and that goes back to the thing of the oral sex. If you have a cut in your mouth and you're having oral sex with somebody and you're not using any dental dam, which is sort of like a little layer of like having a sheet of a condom, and it protects you from getting, it's like a barrier. It serves as a barrier, so it protects you from blood, semen contact, stuff like that, so that you can't get it in your bloodstream. You won't catch it, hopefully. But there are other things that could be in around the mouth, like the guy that had the herpes. You see where the herpes is on his mouth, on his lip. So if he's having oral sex with somebody, let's say he doesn't, he might feel it, or maybe he doesn't feel it. But let's say he doesn't feel anything, but it's there, and he's having oral sex with someone. I'm just giving you a visual, and she's going to get it, And so maybe he doesn't know it's there, or maybe he feels something's there and he's thinking, oh, it's just a simple cold sore, it's not going to do anything, but it's herpes. Yes, he can give it to her that way too. So I'm just telling you. So I'm just giving you a clue here. But anyway, this woman right here, I remember this story, and you guys probably said, man, she remembers so much stuff, but she caught it from a dentist office visit. And so I'm not trying to freak people out, but they're good about now. The dentists are good about cleaning things and making sure. And also, people can catch TB from tattoos. We got a lot of people that love to get tattoos. Yeah. You have people that were using the same needle they use on other people. And guess what else you can get with tattoo needles? If they don't clean them and they don't change the needles, you can get AIDS. Yes, you can. I think you can. If the blood is still there and it's still infected, they say, oh, as soon as it's there, you are not going to get it. I believe there's still a chance. If that needle is still there, it's full of this infected TB blood and whatever's on there. It's a possible chance. It may be low, but any risk of that, please, you're transferring somebody's blood. If it can be given through a blood transfusion and through a dental thing, then it can also, the open needles that you can get if you are using an infected person that has AIDS or HIV and they're on drugs, and you can get it like that, then yeah, you can get it through the tattoo needles too. It's the same thing. So I'm just letting you young people that think you're, invincible and that you can't get anything, it's out there. All these things are out there. And so you have to be aware of what you're doing. Going, take a bath, getting dressed cute, wearing nice clothes and having a nice car doesn't protect you from any of this. So I'm just letting you know. I'm not going to lie to you like some of the people do out there. If you learn about some of this stuff, you'll realize that people can live with herpes also. There's a stigma behind it. People who have herpes live with it, and they can have babies, and they can have a life, and they can have a sex life if they get educated about it, and people learn how to be honest about their sexual history and learn how to protect themselves so that they don't end up with these things as well. And so it starts with education. So anyway, I'm going to let this video go. You can give your feedback if you want to, but I'm just being honest with you. I know some people who had experienced things like this, and then I worked in a hospital before, worked in a couple of hospitals, so I know about a lot of this stuff. So that's why I keep bringing it up, because a lot of people don't realize that just getting together with people and not knowing their sexual history is not smart. A lot of times people get involved with people and they don't really ask the sexual history. They just start sleeping with them. And so when you start sleeping with somebody, you best believe their sexual history is now a part of yours, because you just included them in it, in your life, in your sexual history, your new one. And so if they come with something, then now you're the new person that they have to, disclose that information to, or either you end up getting it and that's how you learn about it. With that being said, anyway, let me try to click on this. I'm going to go into where I was, because people probably can't see. And so I'm on screen share. And so if you couldn't see, if it blurted out some stuff, I'm going to go back and forth on this. And so I'm going to pan through all of the stuff that I've been on. So if you missed anything. Okay, so this was about the woman who was in the dentist's office and died of HIV. Well, HIV turned into AIDS eventually. And so I went to that. And this is the guy here, that dating site for people with herpes aren't all what they're cracked up to be. I was reading this, and this is a guy who has what people think is a regular cold sore is herpes. Cold sores are herpes. So stop lying to people. It's herpes. It is. People act like it's nothing. It is herpes. And people give it to kids because they kiss kids and give that. If they have a cold sore on their lip, they're giving it to the kids. So the kids now have it on their lips. So sexually transmitted diseases, they're stigmas. And so this is what people don't want to talk about. Sexually transmitted diseases that are all at an all-time high. This is the other article. It's by Rachel Feltman, August 29th, 2018. This is more recent. And this is out of the Health, Popular Science. And so let me see if you can see it. I'm just checking to see if you can see this because people act like this doesn't exist. Oh, I don't want to hear about this. It's not going to happen to me. So anyway, so I'm going to leave at this. And so let me go back to where I originated from. And this is the guy with the herpes. And so I'm not saying this to make it, it's not funny. I'm not making fun of anybody with it. I'm just saying that people can still live healthy lives if they learn and get educated about this stuff. And it's just silly that people, they make fun of people who have this as if they're never going to get it. Yet they're still sleeping around. And then, I've seen like on YouTube, there's all these women. Oh, girl, I'm going to find this man. I'm going to do this. And oh, my husband. Yeah, your husband could be out fooling around. And you might have something and not even know it. Or it could be the other way around, vice versa, or both. The more people you include in your sex life, the more people you have intimate encounters with, the more you open up yourself to these issues. And let's just be real here. I'm not going to lie about it, since everybody wants to do this tell-all thing. So here we go. So this is what I was reading from, if you want to know. So that I'm not just playing a game. But anyway, with that being said, I'm going to leave it at this. Thanks for listening.